pops up. So I'm really pleased that Paul Skinner is available to chat to us today. As we were discussing earlier, Paul, what, 40 odd years in the industry now?
Yeah, 45.
45 years in the industry. You're obviously a well-known face and name for a lot of people in the industry as a technical expert. So we're really pleased that
I'm
you're
not
able
sure
to join.
about expert. I just know who to talk to get the answer. That's the key thing.
That's a good line, actually.
Like Adrian, so I'll ask him.
But now you're established as a consultant in bathroom, plumbing, and heating industry. I know you've supported the UWLA, and you continue to do so. And this session is all about the repairability of brassware, the importance of eco-design, and a circularity is becoming increasingly important. And it's something that various governments are now going to start almost mandating on, that there's, the circularity within the sector. So Paul, if you want to start the presentation, I'll step back in the background, and I'll keep an eye on the Q&A for anybody that wants to drop in any questions.
Great, thanks, Lisa.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for giving us this opportunity to just give people an insight of some of the work we're getting involved in with repairability and where it started from. So I'll just start the presentation now to give you some background. I hope everyone can see the slides there, Lisa? Okay, so back in March this year at ISH, the Unified Water Label Association made a presentation called Pushing Boundaries. And Pushing Boundaries was a new project which is aimed at gaining self-regulatory measures under the ESPR. And the area we'd be looking at is spares, repair, reuse, recycle, and durability. Now they're massive subjects, and will take a long time to go through everything there. But why we're doing it, eco design requirements and more or less all categories of physical goods are being covered, and the areas they're covering are interesting. Most of you'll know already is improving product durability, reusability, upgradability, and repairability. Enhancing the possibility of product maintenance and refurbishment, making products more energy and resource efficient, addressing substances that inhibit circularity, and increasing the recycled content within the manufacturing processes. So, as it says there, making it more easy to use, remanufacture, recycle. We're not going to cover recycling today because that is a massive subject, and I think we need some other experts involved as well. Carbon and environmental footprints, limiting the generation of waste, and improving the availability of information on product sustainability. Now, the UWLA has always been about providing information to members, end users, etc., to make a choice, and to add into there of repair, reuse, recycle, and durability is adding that bit more information that the EU Commission, etc., is pushing us to do. The first project that we're looking at there is the repairability of taps. And as mentioned, when I first started in this industry, I would say the majority of people would repair their taps. Now, 45 years later, not so many people repair taps. They tend to replace them for a number of reasons. And repairing a tap, what is it? What is the repairability of a tap? Is it easy? Is it a complex repair? Can you do it yourself, or do you need to get your plumber, a professional in to repair it? Do users want to repair their taps, or do they just want to go and buy a new one? Do they want to change? But also, if they want to repair it, how easy is it to access spares? And how long should a product be repairable? Now, the access of spares, sometimes we need to have more of a common language, because what one manufacturer calls a component can be called something else to another manufacturer. To the end user, they'll be contacting a customer service department and saying, can I have a replacement thingamajig that goes on top of the what's it, because the bit there ain't working. You know, they don't know the language that we speak. So again, a part of this project, we're trying to get some common language and common information that we can put out to those end users. And also we want to look at the regulatory or legal issues that might be there, because the repairing of a particular tap now might be deemed not acceptable in the future. So when you look at the old-fashioned tap, the old-fashioned pillar tap, with its jumper and washer and gland packing, they were easy to maintain. Turn the water off, unscrew the top handle, then unscrew the cover. You get to the gland nut, you can tighten the gland nut if you want, or you unscrew the actual headwork, take out the jumper, you can replace the washer. The washer was dead easy to replace. Sometimes it just pushed on, other times it was a nut that was holding it on. But the selection of washers and O-rings, etc., that was available there's plenty. The little box there, that is available from Screwfix with all different sizes of fibre washers and seating washers. And then, as I mentioned in the presentation in Frankfurt, once you got that all out, the headwork, you could look at the actual seat, and you got the seat cutting tool. There's a lot of people have shown this picture to, this image. I thought, what's that? Because they don't tend to use it anymore. They don't tend to buy them anymore. And in some cases, we don't even know what the seating is. And if that's rough, or you've got some wire draw where the water has eroded part of the seating, then you need to get that cutting tool and repair it. And these were regular maintenance sort of features that people did to keep those taps working. But have we now become a throwaway society, or is replacing quicker than repairing? Some of it personal choice. The end user wants a change of design, a change of style, redo the bathroom. That's their individual, that's up to them. They might want to change the colour scheme. They might want to go from chrome taps to gold taps, or brushed nickel, or bronze, or gunmetal, all the different finishes that are available these days. What we end up with, I was talking to a waste recovery guy the other day, and he was saying he was getting £3,000 a tonne for brass and £4,000 a tonne for copper. So someone's making money out of it. But your basin mixer, your typical basin mixer there, which I've pinched the drawing from one of the BMA members' sites. That monoblock mixer there, to be honest, is a very easy tap fitting mixer to actually repair. There's not much to it. You've got a body, you've got a handle, you've got a coloured indice there. You turn the water off, take off the handle, gain access to the cartridge. You just got to take these off here. Cartridge comes out, put a new one in, unscrew the flow straightener or aerator. Tap tails, just screw in. You haven't got soldered connection ones anymore there. And then the pop-up waste, even if the pop-up waste supplied has failed, you can go into your DIY store and buy a similar product, or you buy a click-clack waste to replace it, or a push-down waste. There's plenty of choice. There's loads out there. The headwork side. The headwork there of a non-rising spindle headwork on the left. Seal can be changed. O-ring can be changed there. Put some approved grease lubricant on there, and you've got it working again. Quarter turn ceramic disc tap headwork. A little bit more complex. There's not many people who want to take out the discs and sort them out. But that component can be changed in its entirety quite easily. And then mixers of today, most mixers, the cartridge is this combined unit. Again, I think it's easy to repair. The components that you can get from the spares replacement people these days from different companies like Bathroom Spares on the websites, etc. They've got the offerings of the flow straighteners, the handles, the little indice there if you're hot and cold, and the hoses. Everything seems to be available, but sometimes it's difficult actually finding that source. And that is where the Water Label and its members and members of the BMA are working hard to give more information to the end user to be able to find that info. But the big topic, or part of that, is the actual servicing. How often should you service a tap? And that's quite difficult. The end user needs to understand what's actually happening with their fitting. Where I live, we have the hardest water in all of the country. So servicing of your taps, like removing limescale off the outlets, was a weekly process. So you go through plenty of Viacal. Now we've got a water softener fitted. That makes a lot of difference, but that's added cost. So the service intervals, I'll say we were doing it weekly. I'd be looking at the headwork at least every 6 months anyway. An annual service I would definitely start to look at. But most users, most people operating their taps, I bet they don't even touch it. I bet they never even take things apart. I think they just leave it, but clean the exterior of the fitting to maintain it that way. But that will be about it. That is probably as much as they do. And they'll then wait until that product fails. And that product failing is a cost. It's a cost to the end user. It's also adding waste into the stream that we want to try and cut down on. We want to increase the longevity of those fittings and keep them operating as long as we can. But then the level of service that's required, the basic monoblock mixer I was showing you there, the basic mixer, I believe that's a DIY job. But some people might deem it to be a professional. There's other fittings, other tap fittings that might become more complicated to service, particularly when you've got electronic taps, etc. That might put the DIYer off. The local janitor, maintenance guy in an office block, he might be put off from maintaining that fitting and want to get a professional in. And the project we're doing now with the UWLA is looking into these areas with members to look at how long should we keep spares. At the latest meeting, we're looking at probably around about keeping spares for about 10 years, making them available to the end user. And there's a lot more to go. Hopefully by November, we will have something down in writing on paper, ready to put out to people to set a criteria, and then we'll move from there. But the big thing really is look at the taps in your manufacturing and your selling to those end users, and is there enough information for those end users to maintain that product, to find those spares? Where's the links to the spares? What sort of spares are being kept? You know, do you keep O-rings? Do you keep seating washers? Is there packs of grease? Or Is it modular? So it's a cartridge, it's a headwork or a service pack. So there's a lot to be done. It has been done before, but we seem to have lost sight of it a little bit. And from the slides I want to present, that's them. So I'll stop sharing, and then we can have a chat, a conversation, if we can unmute anybody.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. So I don't think we can unmute people at this. I think it's all in the Q&A. I mean, what would you think is the first steps then? Is it obviously there needs to be a clearer message to the end user that it's many of the repairs aren't a scary thing. They are actually achievable. Is it down to manufacturers to put more information into leaflets when products are bought? And if that's the case, how does that not work if they've had a professional plumber come in, fit everything, and then they take everything away and there's no information there for the end user? I'm thinking households perhaps more than anything.
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think it's more than just putting the onus on the manufacturer. Because I would say the majority of installation instructions are thrown away.
Yeah.
At the point of installation. So the information is not always left there with that end user. I think the key one, more than anything, is we've got to find a way of educating people. And YouTube is fantastic to find information about how to service most things or how to fit something. I think that medium of getting that out to the end users is fantastic. So I think we've got to educate people. I hear, as many of us do, so many times about reducing your carbon footprint, being greener. But when I was a kid, the milk was delivered on an electric float. So it was operated by a battery, no diesel, no petrol. And the milk bottles were picked up the following day. They were recycled. Your bottles of pop, you have to get 2p for taking your bottle back, and they were recycled.
Yeah.
The butcher put your sausages in paper that went into a string bag, no plastic bags. So this is nothing new. We've all done it before, and it's just stepping back a bit and try to understand. And that's what we got with the tap fittings. The taps the way they are, that monoblock mixer, there can't be anything more simple than actually maintaining that tap. The tap tails screw in. The flow straightener screws in. You take off the tap handle and then quick unscrew the actual dome or the cover that's on there, and you gain access to the cartridge, and you can take that out and change that as a module. I don't think we should actually start taking cartridges apart and trying to maintain them. But those basic things are easily achievable. And I think generations before, that make, do and mend sort of mentality, I think there's some lessons that we need to bring back and move forward with that. The repairability of fittings, I think, is somebody said to me, well, aren't you going to reduce sales of taps if you're just going to keep repairing them? I don't know, probably we will. I don't know. But what you do is you've got a captive market for spares. So when you've got a hospital where you've got facilities management looking after that hospital for 30 years, and you've sold your taps to that contract, then they want a service program. They want spares available within that time, and also probably replacement product as well. Because sometimes, is it we want a service program to service these taps every year? We'd like to change the cartridge every 5 years. We'd like to change the taps in their entirety every 10 years, 15 years, because then they don't have to change all the pipe work and everything to suit. You've got them. So there's, for me, for like the members of the BMA, you've got that opportunity to push that area more and more with spares. You know, the sales guys and marketing guys will know more than that than me. But when I ran one of the customers, well, I ran the customer service department for a large manufacturer. The spares area drew in a lot of money. It was very, very profitable. And it was amazing how many times you would see product scrapped on a major site inside a prison, inside a hospital, where all it needed was a bag of 50 O-rings.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Now, sales guy may have been rubbing his hands because he's got a load of new taps. But, you know, taking all those fittings out and closing down those areas and sterilising and everything, where the local, the maintenance guy could have just changed a few O-rings. I think that part's quite scary.
So the project that you're working on with UWLA, what's the process for that? Is there any way that our members need to be getting more involved?
I would say that majority of your members who are already members of the UWLA have got involved. The last meeting was quite a good turnout, actually. It was all on Teams, and I think there was about 23 people participating, from across the UK and Europe. And and there's been a lot of questions that have come out of it since then. Repairability was the starter. The UWLA had a university commission. Well, they got the university at Kiel to carry out doing some research into this issue, and they've come up with a scoring method to actually score a product on its repairability, its recyclability, its durability, etc. Personally, at this minute, and I'm leading this project, is we're, I think, a long way from the points scheme. The first part of it really is the repairability, and that is making spares available for an agreed length of time.
Yeah.
Generally across the UK and Europe, 10 years seems to be the magic figure. But that's not agreed yet, but that's the sort of figure we're looking at. Recycling of product. I know the scrap guy I spoke to the other week, £3,000 a ton for brass. However, if he receives it as a ton of taps with polymers and elastomers and everything within them, he'll get £100 a ton. So he has guys stripping those taps down to get that brass body, those raw brass components, so he can get the best money he can from them. The mixing of different brasses together in recycling, and where do you recycle them? That's a big question, because one of the things is with recycling, and I mentioned a dish, is that packet of crisps, it said recycling store. No, I'm not going to take my empty bags of crisps down to the supermarket, which I have done. And they just say, oh, what do I want to do with that?
Yeah.
Oh, shove it in the bin. So it just goes in the normal waste bin.
Yeah.
You've got plastics, like plastics which are black. You have real big struggle actually recycling those, even though you can recycle that plastic. The actual scanners through the sorting area can't identify it, so they put it to waste. So there's a lot of things already being done there with packaging and food containers, etc. But is that working? Because when you see the sign recycle, but it says don't recycle at home, recycle at a recycle point. What is that recycle point? And why can't I recycle it at home? Because I've got a recycle bin, so why can't I put it in there?
Mm.
It gets confusing. And the one thing I think with the industry that we're in, because people don't pick up taps and dispose of them as regular as they would do a packet of crisps, we've got to make it quite simple, and we've got to make it clear of how that product is recycled. Durability, that will link with standards.
Yeah.
There's plenty of information out there on standards, and the guys at the likes of NSF and Kiwa, they're involved with these presentations, these meetings, these projects as well, so we can get their input into it, and we can move forward from there. But repairability is the big one at the minute.
Yeah, recycling is too far down the line at the moment, isn't it?
I don't know enough about that bit yet. So. But repairability, I've repaired enough taps and showers and other fittings over the years to keep them going, and that's what we've got to move on with. We've got to keep moving with that one, and educate people. It's education. The work the Unified Water Label is doing with water efficiency. The BMA is heavily involved with that. You're doing the best you can, talking to the UK government. Tom's at the front there, but most people, it's that education of how we use water. So we've got to educate people to use water wisely. We've got to educate people to understand their taps. I think it was not last ish, the ish before, somebody said to me, I don't know, I don't understand all these taps and sanctuary, etc. And I said, of course you do. I said, you might know nothing about a spaceship going off to the moon. I said, but how old were you when you first operated a tap? 3, 4? You've been using a toilet a long time. You've been using taps and toilets long before you went into the bathroom industry. So you know how they work. So it's not like the ceramics guys will say the black art. It's there. It's in front of us, and we can try and make it a little bit easier for people. And it is education, education, education with everything.
Yeah. I think it's more of a generational gap. I mean, I don't really want to say how old I am, but how well I'm kind of mid-50s heading into 60s. And my partner and I will use Google, we'll YouTube everything. If we're not sure how to fix something, we'll find out. And although the younger generation are very digitally savvy, it seems to me that it wouldn't occur to them to try and fix something themselves. And I'm only going from personal experience with, children and things like that, where they have no idea and say, well, YouTube it. We shouldn't really need to tell you this, but there's a tutorial video to do anything, isn't there, on there?
Yeah.
And they're really simple fixes most of the time. And I must admit, we find it quite astounding that they haven't thought that you could repair things yourself. So I don't know if it's a generational thing where we've lost a hands-on approach to things. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think, how can I put it? I think things have become too easy, and to actually splash some cash is an easier option. However, over the years, I mentioned to you earlier, I owned a Series 3 Land Rover, and I could repair that in a field with a spanner and a screwdriver. I don't know where to start on a Tesla. It's quite scary. I had a combi boiler repaired by Bosch, and they did a great job, because at the end of it, My 11-year-old boiler was more or less brand new because they replaced a part and it still didn't work. They replaced something else and it still didn't work. They replaced the control unit and it still didn't work. So I think everything was changed via apart from the burner box. So it was more or less brand new because it's this modular change culture. You want to get your car serviced, they plug in a diagnostics machine. So it gets very, very complicated. But taps, at the end of the day, your hot water, your cold water comes in one end and the mixed water comes out the other end. And there's a bit in the middle that controls it.
Mm.
And if that's not working, then get inside it and change it.
Yeah.
And that's the education we need to put out there.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're expecting to deliver some more information in November. What do you think what form will that take?
Well, it's planned that during the AGM for the water label, that will have some sort of closure on this first step. That will have some agreements in place of how long spares should be made available to the end user, how they gain access to those spares, and how they gain access to the information and how that information is maintained, over that period of time.
Yeah.
Now, there will be some components that you won't be able to get spares for because it'll be deemed that that product has become inefficient and might contravene with certain regulations or legislation going forward, that you don't want to have it in place. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But everything else we need somehow or other to make it available. And I would say the majority of your members have got that information, but sometimes it's hidden a bit, or it's not complete.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing what you can produce in November, and obviously we'll help to publicise that in any way that we can as well once it's ready.
Yeah. Well, we're doing at the installer show. There is a round table sort of conversation on this subject again.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be a number of people who have been invited anyway to that to get involved, and we have a bit of a discussion, a chit chat about it because it involves all of us in this industry. And I just wish that actually Lewis and Adrian weren't muted to see what their thoughts are on this anyway. We've got plenty of experience, and I'd like to know what their thoughts and feedback is on this sort of subject.
If they can pop anything into the chat function or Q&A, we can certainly see those. Which I guess it'll take a bit of time to come through anyway. But it's a really interesting, Paul. I mean, it's we should be able to unmute now, apparently. If any of you would like to unmute.
Yeah, I think Lewis has.
Hiya.
Hi, Lewis.
Thanks, Paul, for today. It's really been interesting. I think from a grower perspective, one of the things which we're sort of focusing on is, like you said, about YouTube videos and on where the content is, because like you said, the TPIs and the technical documents which come with the product are often kind of thrown out.
Yeah.
And really, from a consumer perspective, you've got to put the content where they're searching for it, and whether that's on YouTube directly or on the manufacturer's website. It seems like that's probably the most sensible way about doing it.
Yeah, well, I think also, we're talking about sustainability, and we don't want to cut down 2 or 3 trees to make more installation instructions. I think the digital format gets to everybody, and if you're actually in the bathroom with a tap that's not working, and you can gain that access, that information on your phone, your smartphone, it's at hand with you all the time. It's brilliant. And you know, the manufacturers out there, you can clearly see what they're doing to give that information, because they know, they accept that the plumber will probably just chuck away the tap with the tap instructions with the box. Adrian, you're unmuted. Any questions?
Hello all. I understand what you're saying. Everything you've said, I understand. But what I can't seem to get my head around is, what's the question? What are you actually asking us to do? Because as a business, I'm sure we do all the right things. You can get all the information, you can get the spares, the QR codes, we send booklets out, we recycle, we tend not to use plastic bags and the correct packaging, only cardboard. And so I just can't get my head around what the question is.
Well, I think it's about making it sometimes more visible. I think there's a lot of manufacturers out there who are doing all the hard work, but they're not making much out of it, as in promoting what you're doing, you know, being proud of what you've done and publishing that. And I think it's the different platforms, like with the BMA and the water label, that with newsletters, etc., that they blast out this information more and more to your specifiers, your M&E contractors, your plumbers, and ultimately the end users as well. And platforms like the Installer Show are great to get that message out there, because most manufacturers for decades have been doing all this. This industry has been fantastic at leading the way in developing great products and being at the front of making those products way before any standards or legislation have come in. You know, it's this industry that was saving water way before they were asked to. You know, they were reducing flow rates on taps, reducing volume on flushes, etc., investigating it way before anybody put it into a standard or a regulation to make them do it. But no one knew about it. It was all kept quite close internally. And you have to correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think a lot of that work's carried out by technical guys, and there's often seems to be quite a void between the technical people and then the sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. So the sales and marketing at the front, and then the technical guys sort of sometimes like hide in the background. You know, as I say, 45 years in the industry, always working in technical departments. And I've been to ISH twice in 45 years. I've never been to a BMA conference, ever.
Wow.
Paul, we have to fix that.
Because a lot of technical guys, no, no. We're not getting you on the golf course. You stay there in the background. Get back in the test room.
Terrible.
So I think there is that sort of void, but we've got to get that message out, because the members out there, when you go into those websites, etc., you can see the fantastic work that's being done about sustainability, the carbon footprint, what you're doing with your packaging submissions, everything around packaging, the recycled materials that are going in. You've got companies with solar panels on the roof and other, but we don't hear much about it unless you go onto that website and you start reading. But I don't think many end users think, oh, Sunday morning, I won't turn the telly on. I think I'll go and look at one of the bathroom manufacturers' websites and have a good read. And then they get carted away with a white coat. So
it depends on your geekery level, Paul, I think.
Yeah, well, mine's mass geek.
Right.
So did that answer the question, Adrian?
Yes and no. I'm going to bounce this off a couple of people, our compliance people and our marketing.
Yeah. Well, there will be some
Um,
follow-up meetings.
Fully agree
which
that we
you'll,
should advertise more.
which you'll obviously be invited to. But it's like when I the water label itself that's shared. There's so many members of the water label, but there's only a small percentage which are actually regularly promoting the water efficiency. You can go into the technical data and you can actually see that information, but you have to look for it. It's not right in front of you. Others are brilliant. Like at Ish, there was a few manufacturers there that had that water efficiency information on the stands, on the displays, but there wasn't a lot. And that again comes to like the spares section. Like, so on a stand at the installer show, of all the members of the BMA, etc., who are displaying their products, how many will have a board or some promotion of the availability of spare parts, particularly with being an installer show? I don't think any will.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, I think it's a lost opportunity.
Okay.
Yes, something
Right.
to think about. Okay.
Okay.
I think we might have come to the end. Thank you so much, Paul. It's been
No
really,
problem.
really interesting. I think it's something that, you've given us a lot of food for thought of how we need to start considering how we take this forward on repairability. Recyclability much further down the line, I guess. We need to nail the repairability side first.
Yeah, it's how we promote that, and that's the message that we're trying to push forward. And thank you to the BMA. Tom spoke to me at Ish, and he'd heard the presentation there, and he said, we'd like to get involved more. It's a subject we're talking about, and we want to, grow that anyway. And the BMA have always been at the forefront of anything new. So great, thank you.
Yeah, no, we'll help in any way that we can. So thank you, Paul. Hopefully we'll see you at Installer Show if you're coming along. Yeah, brilliant.
I'll be there on the 24th and 25th, I think.
Great. And let's see if we can find any stands that are promoting the use of spares. Could be an interesting one. Let's get a spreadsheet together.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.